Welcome to the Bring Your Product Idea to Life podcast. This is the podcast for you if you're getting started selling products or if you'd like to create your own product to sell. I'm Vicky Weinberg, a product creation coach and Amazon expert. Every week, I share friendly, practical advice as well as inspirational stories from small businesses. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to Bring Your Product Idea to Life. Today I'm speaking to Louise Meddar. Louise is the founder of a luxury handbag brand that fuses luxury fashion with her cultural background to create something truly unique. Louise talks about how she set up her brand in memory of her mother. Her brand has been around for a long time now, so we speak about how the early days look like, how the brand has grown, and the things she's done to stay consistent, all of the things that she's learned along the way. This is a really interesting, fascinating conversation. As you'll hear, Louise is so passionate about her brand, about the business, and she's really knowledgeable as well. And so there is a lot to learn in this episode. So I'd love now to introduce you to Louise. Hi, Louise. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Vicky. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Can we please start by you giving an introduction to yourself, your business, and what you sell?
So I am the founder of Louise Meddar, which is a bespoke Jamaican British handbag brand. I'm based in London, and we sell luxury handbags crafted with a little bit of a story, my Jamaican heritage, and also craftsmanship as well. Um, Originally, I started the brand in memory of my mom, who passed away in 2012. And subsequently, since then, it's just grown into, doing something in terms of cultural and heritage, and also looking at the market and what it's offering to people. I found that for myself, there wasn't any brands out there that excuse me, had a story behind their brand and what they were trying to sort of get through to customers and consumers and stuff like that. So that was how I started originally, and I've just been growing ever since.
Amazing. Thank you. And why bags, Louise? What was it about bags that drew you in?
I've always loved handbags. My mom was a sewing machinist and my dad was a cobbler. So he used to make our shoes when we used to go to school. And the whole leather, idea has always been in our family. And with my mom, it was always, even if you have one pair of shoes, make sure that they're really well made and the quality is really good. And it was always leather. So it's just kind of stuck with me. Handbags, who doesn't love a handbag? And, my mum and I, we would sort of always trying to fight because she was always trying to steal my handbags and, the whole sort of Sunday best as well, having, matching shoes, matching handbag for your Bible and, your knickknacks and stuff like that was always just sort of, ingrained in me from young, really. So it was just so fitting, that I was going to pay homage to her and use leather at the same time.
Thank you. And yeah, like what a lovely tribute to her.
Yeah, I mean, she's an amazing woman. She, you know, gave me such good advice and, in terms of style and just being yourself, Jesus, individuality, she would always say, be a leader, not a follower. Um, and that's why it was really important for me to do this and kind of, get it out there and trying to push it even more because I just think that at the moment, with so many things on the market, there's nothing that sort of stands out culturally with a story and with the heritage and stuff like that. So I wanted to do something like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about the cultural side of it a bit later, if that's okay. But I'd love to start right at the beginning. So you had the idea inspired by your mum. What did
hmm
those early days look like? How did you actually get the brand off the ground?
Oh, wow. I mean, how long do you have?
As long as you
I,
need.
oh gosh, this is just like a mad story. So after mom passed away, I knew that I wanted to do something. And, obviously I love bags. So I thought, let me just try and go down that route. Um, I can't draw. So I just sketched some bags, on a piece of paper and I found someone. Okay. So there's a guy in Brixton that sells fabric and I used to have my clothes made as well. So I used to go to the fabric shop and get fabrics from him. And then I asked him, I said, "Oh, do you know anyone who makes leather bags as samples and stuff?" And he said, "I do." So that was also his kind of sideline as well. So we met up. He's got a studio in his flat not far from where I live. I took the my sketches down, and he basically made my samples from then. So then I was like, okay, now I have no direction. I don't know what I'm doing because this is not my bag. Um, but I just thought I'm just gonna just carry on. So he made the samples, and then it was like, okay, what am I going to do with these samples? I really, really want to try and get them made, even if I have a few pieces, like 10 of each pieces, because I did four at the time, four samples. And I called up a leather wholesalers. They sell leather and suede and whatever. And I just said to them, look, I've just had some samples made. Do you know anyone that can make them on a larger scale? And they were really reluctant to give out information. And I think I just got someone who was nice on the day, and she just said, "Oh, look, I know someone in Bethnal Green who makes leather bags." So I contacted them and went to see them, and they said, yeah, they could make my bags for me. But after about a few months of going backwards and forwards, nothing really happened. They didn't do anything. They cut the shapes out, but that was it about it. They hadn't done anything else. And at the time, there was a guy milling around, and he was making a leather hoodie. Turns out he was making a leather hoodie for Skepta. The guy's name is Angelo Van Mol. And we got to talking because he'd seen my samples, and he said, "Oh, your bags are really lovely. You know, what are you doing with them? Where are you having them made?" And I says, "Well, I'm here to have them made with these guys." And he said, "They're not the ones." He says, "I can put you in touch with a few people, but they won't make your bags." He said, "They really specialize in clothing." So we started working together. Um, but before that, a friend of mine had some contacts in Vietnam. So I went to Vietnam, um, to another manufacturers, and I just went to a few shops, and just to see if they could, because a lot of people have said, "Oh, try outside England," and whatever. So I went to Vietnam, and I went to a few shops there, and I came across one who said they could definitely make them. So I gave them my samples, and I was there for about 10 days, so I had plenty of time to go and see other people as well. And they really couldn't do what I wanted, to be honest. They didn't know what edge coat was, which is just like the paint that goes around the bag to finish it off and make it look amazing. They didn't know what silver foil was and embossing and stuff like that. So they definitely wasn't the right people for me. But it was an amazing experience, and I think you've got to just do these things
Mm.
and try. And then when I came back to London, Angela and I decided to move forward. So we started doing a collab together where he was working with a factory at the time, and he had some contacts in Spain and Portugal and things like that. So he got me in touch with someone in Portugal. So I went out there and spoke to them and took my samples out there. And this is an amazing factory. They make a lot of stuff for, some really good brands. So I started working with them, and that's how I got my first collection together, really. And it's just gone on from there.
That's an amazing story, thank you. And one thing I took from that is you're not afraid to ask, and I think that's kind of something that it's kind of underrated as like a skill and a way to
Yeah.
go about things. But I think, yeah, it seems to me you were just going around and just asking people, and you got what you needed, and I think that's really good.
I think there comes a point where you just have to be really bold. I mean, what's the worst someone can say? No. I'm used to hearing that all the time. So, you know, out of 10 no's, there's going to be one yes. Do you know what I mean? And even
Yeah.
if it's not perfect, it might lead to something else. So these days, I always ask. I never sort of say, "Oh, I don't know, I don't think." And you might have this story in your head. I just ask. If someone says, "No, I can't do it at the moment," or "Come back to me in 6 months' time," that's fine. And it's all about contacts as well. As a designer and as a creative working on your own, you need a lot of people around you, freelancers, and even just someone that you can bounce ideas off and stuff like that. So it's always interesting to have, different people. And as much as, a lot of people have said, oh, yeah, we'll work together, and it hasn't happened, I can still call them up or email them and say, look, do you remember our conversation in 2024? Is there any chance this can happen? Or what do you think about this? And, people are really good, I find, at giving advice and helping you out. Sometimes they're not in a position to help you. Sometimes they are. So, but yeah, definitely. I think it's always good to ask someone, what's the worst thing they can say? No. Or yes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Really, I really like that. You mentioned, Louise, that you didn't have any drawing skills
Mhm.
when you started out. So what's your process for designing your bags? Do you have like all in your head? Does someone help you get it onto paper? How are you doing
It's
that?
all in my head, Vicky. It's all in my head. Yeah, literally. I, you know what? I love people. I love looking at what people are wearing, and I get the bus to work sometimes and I get the tube. So I'm always looking at what people are wearing. And even though I'm not a fashion whore, I still like fashion. I like what's going on. I'm not one of these people that, will go out and buy the latest things. That's just not me. But I like to see what's going on. So a few weeks ago, I was on the bus and I was looking at someone had their work bag, their typical work bag. They also had a laptop bag and also a rucksack. And I thought to myself, how about if I design a work bag come laptop bag at the same time? So that's what's in my head at the moment. So I'm trying to get that down on paper. Um, Luckily for me, Angelo is amazing at, getting my vision. So if I say to him, look, this is what I want to do. What do you think? And he'll look at it and he'll go, okay. Because he knows that that's not my background. So he's not sort of like sniggering at me thinking, oh God, this is really stupid. He gets it, because that's just, whereas he can draw, that's his skill. So it literally is me just sort of sketching something and writing next to it, zip goes here, enclosure goes here, and then trying to do it like that. And sometimes when we're putting something together, he'll say, oh, well, how about if you add this here? Or how about if you do that? And I don't, that's not going to work because that's not going to, and it depends on the fabric, the leathers that you're using as well. So that always comes into play. Depending on whether or not if it's calf skin or if it's the leather that's quite rigid, and it just changes everything. So, but yeah, I'm one of these people. I design things in my head, and then I come home and then I sketch them on a piece of paper.
I like that. And do you know what? One thing I like about it is because I think some people, if they don't have like artistic skills, might say, "Oh, I
Mm,
can't do something creative. I can't do something in
yeah,
design because I can't draw. I can't get it on paper." So I think it's
yeah,
really good that you found a way to make it work. I mean, you strike me, Louise, as the sort of person who will always make it work. But I think it's good that you found a way to get the ideas out of your head and like
yeah,
to have your design. It sounds like your bags, they are exactly what you envisage.
yeah,
It's just the way that you go about it might not be the
yeah.
same process as someone else might use.
I think as well, it's quite funny because I'm sitting there designing this bag, and from my point of view, I want to carry a certain way. So I make it how I want. And then I go to my friends and I ask my friends, okay, I'm doing a bag, I'm designing a bag, and it's going to be A. What do you want in your bag? Because obviously everyone's got different things that they carry around, their charger, a water bottle, anything. So, and also I'm really big on keeping things kind of sleek, but also hidden as well. Um, so in the bag, there's going to be a compartment that's got a zip that you can, just fling your keys in or your phone or any kind of like personal items, and you can just zip it up. So if anyone decides they're going to try and, put their hand in the bag, they're not going to get any of your sort of like personal items or anything like that. So, and pockets as well. I love a pocket in a bag, at least two pockets, a zip compartment, a slit compartment, and another pocket as well, because, you've got your phone, you've got your travel card, you've got, do you want to throw some change in? So I'm always trying to think of different things to kind of suit everybody. I know you can't, please everyone all the time, but, just like the basic things that people want. And when I ask people, the first thing they ask me about my bag, has it got a zip and has it got a pocket? I'm like, I got you. I got two pockets and a zip. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I do sort of like try to think outside the box and think a little bit differently in terms of, because people carry different things, but obviously it needs to look sleek, um, minimal and stylish at the same time as well. So I'm always trying to, you know, try to think of different things
Yeah,
as I'm on the bus and tube.
and that's a lot to balance. And then I know also like the cultural representation is important to you as well. So, what does, first of all, I've heard you talk about cultural representation in luxury fashion. First of all, what does that mean to you? And then, how do you weave the cultural aspects in as well as the design and the functionality and the practicality? Because that's a lot, isn't it, to balance?
Yeah, I think through representation, cultural representation and heritage and my story as well, coming from, my Jamaican roots, my Jamaican background as well. And just doing something that's gives someone identity. Everyone's an individual, so that needs to come across. I don't do mass production or anything like that. I'm a small brand. I'm still growing, so anything that's made, it's bespoke because there's not many of them. So the design as well. It's got the tribal design with my logo embedded into that, and also just letting people know my background, my history, and my story of how I started and how I've got from A to B, and trying to bring that into the brand as well.
Thank you. And what's been some of the challenges you face building a brand with such a strong purpose?
Um, I think it's definitely finding the right people to get you and to see your vision. Um, and also funding. Um, I was quite lucky in the beginning that, I had, some money to start my first collection, which is nice. It's a massive, you know, it just takes the pressure off knowing that you can go ahead and you can make certain decisions, knowing that you've got, some funding behind you. But ultimately, as a brand, if you want to grow and if you want to scale, you need at least two to three pieces. So, um, you start off with your hero piece and then you want to add on to that, if you're looking to get into wholesale or stores and department stores and things like that. So you ultimately need at least two to three pieces. So definitely funding is one of those things, but also having some support because, if you're on your own and you're doing it on your own, yeah, you are making the decisions. But at the end of the day, like I say, it's nice to bounce off people. And when you're talking to other people, other creatives as well, you get so much more information and ideas about how you can do things. I made a lot of monetary mistakes in the beginning because, I didn't know a lot. I didn't know anything. So, you spend a lot of money on someone's yes when really it should be a no. And, I think as well, in the beginning, I was very sort of, okay, it's fine. It's really nice. And then I'd get home and I'd be like, "Oh god, I hate it. Why did I do that? Whatever, whatever." So, I've grown up a lot with my brand as well because you have to be honest from the get-go, especially when you're shelling out a lot of money. And, my first collection was thousands, a lot of money. So, you need to make sure that it's gonna be something that you're proud of and that you really love. If they do something, I remember in the beginning I had there was a laptop bag, beautiful laptop bag, my first collection. And when they'd sent them through, every color apart from pink. So I had a taupe, I had black, I had navy, and I had a pink. And for some unknown reason, the pink would just warble and it was just all bubbly. And I just couldn't work out what's wrong with the pink different to every other color. And I called them up and I said, "Oh, look, there's a problem with the pink one. We need to sort it out." And one of the guys said to me, "Oh, it's just the color. It's just, the leather and it's just made differently." And I just thought, no, it's not. And I was really, annoyed that he was trying to fob me off because, here I've got three other colors and they're fine. What's wrong with this one? So I'd just come back from Portugal on the Friday. I went back again on the Monday and said, "Look, you got to sort this out because, you're due to send out the rest of the pieces and this is not right." And the owner of the factory said, "Okay, I'm going to sort it out." So he made another one while I was there. I mean, they were lovely, lovely factory, Kuka in Portugal. They're such a nice company. They pick you up, they take you out for lunch, they make you feel really part of the family. It's really nice. And he said, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this because he wanted to know as well, why is it bubbling and warbling like this? And, I said it can't be the leather. And he made another one for me, only to find out the lady who'd made the bag had put the facing upside down, so that's why it was all bubbling. Um, and he apologized and said, "I'm really sorry." And I said, "It's fine. I don't care. As long as we sorted out the problem, it's okay." So I think, yeah, you do have to be really tough and kind of stick to your guns and just say, "Look, I'm not happy with something. It needs to be like this." And a lot of them, they really do. I don't know if it's because it's added work for them. But they're like, "Oh, yeah, but you can always." I'm like, "I don't want that. That's not what I want. This is what I want. Can you do this?" And I always ask them now, if I meet anyone and manufacturers, "Can you do it? Do you think you can do it?" And if they do this, I'm like, "Yeah, you're not right for me." Because as someone who's established, you've had a manufacturer for a business for like 25 years, you should be able to do anything, you know? So if I get that, oh, like the typical builder, yeah, I just say, okay, fine. If someone says to me, "Oh, yeah, we do this, we did something like this last week, or we can do this," and, whatever, fine, I'll work with them. But yeah, I think you really have to stick to your guns. And, if then there's, I don't want anyone to try and change my mind, especially if it's something that I know that can be done, or, this is how I want it. I'm just going to stick to my guns. So, yeah. But it's
Yeah.
tough. It is really tough because you do need the funding and, but you also want the support as well. It's nice to have someone that you can bounce off. And, I've got a mentor who is great, that I can just call her up and say, "Oh, look, what do you think about this?" And, vice versa. So I've got two mentors actually. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, that sounds really useful. I'd like to
Yeah.
love to know as well, like you're one of the only people I've spoken to who actually seems to have like been to their manufacturer, seen them in person, seen the factory. Not everyone does. I don't know if you're aware, not everyone does that. Do you think that's
That's
made a
really
difference?
interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you think that's made a difference to the relationship you have with them, like the quality of the product. Obviously, you don't
Mhm.
know any other way, but I'm genuinely interested if you feel like
Yeah,
there's been benefits for you.
absolutely. Um, I think it's really important, for me from the get-go because you want to see who you're working with. You want to see how sustainable they are. You want to see they've got any little kids in the back making your stuff. Do you
Mm.
know what I mean? You
Yeah.
need to know these things. And also I think it just strengthens the relationship between you and them because then, you can just call them up and say, "Oh, I was thinking about doing this. Can you get this? Can you get that? We're going to change this." And if you don't have a relationship with them, they're not going to want to work with you. I mean, obviously, from their point of view, it's money, but, you don't just want to make one collection with them and then just walk away. You want to grow with them because then, you know, the more you make with the manufacturers, the cheaper the price is. The price comes down quite a lot, but also you do want to have a good relationship there. And I was lucky to go Portugal's not that far, so you can just jump on a plane. It's like a couple of hours, um, and have them made and stuff like that. But no, I mean, obviously, now I produce in China. I haven't been to China. I do want to go to China because I want to meet them, obviously. Um, but I think if they were low, if I was working with someone that was a lot easier for me to get to, absolutely. Because yeah, you do want to see, who you want to have that face to face, and be able to have conversations with them and talk about your brand a little bit more, and what you're doing for the future as well. Because the guys in China, they're brilliant. They're always saying to me, "Oh, look, have you got any ideas for your next collection? This is what a lot of people are doing right now. What do you think about this, that, and the third?" So, they're really good in that respect. They do want to keep that, relationship going, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the thing with these relationships is the better you do, the better they do, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
So everyone grows
absolutely.
together is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah,
Because if
there you
you,
go. That's
yeah,
it. Everyone grows together. Yeah, definitely. Um, and I do know. I mean, they've been so helpful because obviously it was my first time using them. They helped me out with getting them delivered here and everything, and gave me as much information and said, "Oh, look, there's another company that you can use, but they're a little bit more expensive, but they might get there a few more days quicker or whatever." So yeah, they were really, really helpful. I give them that for sure.
brilliant. And looking back at your business as a whole, is there anything that you would do differently if you were starting again now?
Lots.
Give us some of the highlights.
What would I do differently? Do you know what? I think, and going back to what I said before about not really speaking up, definitely. I think you from the get-go, when I first started my brand, I was so in my feelings. My mum had just passed away, and I was still grieving massively. And that's why it was really good for me to channel that energy into the bags. So there was a lot that not shouldn't have happened, but I think I should have spoken up a little bit more. I was quite kind of timid and shy because it was my first time working with the manufacturers. So I didn't know, what's the protocol? Can I say this? Can I say that? Can I ask for this? Can I ask for that? But ultimately, it's your brand. You can do what the hell you like. If you want 10 different colored straps. You can have it, you know. I am very, excuse me, very particular about stitching. I come from that background. I used to be a sewing machinist as well when I left school. So I'm very funny about stitching and I want it a certain way. And people might think that's picky, but this is my brand. This is how I want it. What would I do differently? Definitely speak up a lot more. Definitely learn more about marketing and strategy. Um, when I designed the bags, I didn't think about how I was going to sell them. That was the biggest thing. And you kind of have to, a lot of people do, they kind of find their community. You have to find your community. Um, and sort of like promote yourself before you actually get anything to promote, and say, "Oh, look, this is coming out in September. What do you think? What kind of colors would you like?" That kind of thing. So you have to do a lot of market research before, which I didn't do, um, because I was in my feelings and dealing with other stuff. But definitely, yeah, you do have to do all of those things, and you have to have quite a lot of money as well. Um, People say, "Oh, but how much does it cost?" It costs a lot, because it's all the hidden costs that you don't see, the import tax, the shipping. It's horrendous. It's really a lot. Um, so definitely funding, definitely being honest to yourself, being true to yourself, being true to your brand, having a community, and having some really good people around you that can just say, "I don't think that's really going to work," or "Have you looked into this?" And also introducing you to new people, different people as well is really good. Um, Growing your own community for your own self, that you can kind of like sort of bounce off and stuff like that. Like having an Angelo, like I could just call him anytime and just say, "Look, I'm looking at doing this. What do you think about this? And what do you think about the leather?" And that, and he will always come. He's amazing. He's an amazing guy. I wish I could clone him. But yeah, it's been tough, but I think it's you as well. You have to bend, because obviously not everything is going to work how you want it to. So you have to be open to kind of doing things a little bit differently. I mean, sometimes we have things in our head and think, oh, it's going to be like this. But so in the beginning, my first collection was calf skin and it was lined with a nubuck lining. I had no business doing nubuck lining because it was so expensive, but I wanted to do something really nice and I had the budget for it, but I could have used something slightly cheaper that was just as nice. But I was adamant, no, I'm going to use this nubuck lining, even though it's costing X amount. So little things like that, definitely I would. I'm not saying it, I would use something way, way, way cheaper to cut the cost because, that it wasn't about that. It was about producing something really nice that I'm going to be proud of, which I was so much. And it was they're lovely bags. So little things like that. Yeah, just doing a bit more research and finding out stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And I think, by the way, I feel like everybody needs an Angelo from what you've said. I think,
He's amazing. I mean, if there was someone um that you needed to say no in a nice way, or it's not going to work, he's your guy. But and also, I think the reason why I love him so much is because he always comes up with a different idea. He always gives you another idea to look at, another, oh, have you thought about doing it like this? Have you thought about using this? Have you thought about doing maybe canvas and leather or, something? So he's brilliant. He's absolutely amazing.
so having a mentor sounds like that's something that's been really
Absolutely.
beneficial.
He's an amazing like that. He really does sort of, and he's always saying to me, okay, so we're doing this. How are you going to get them out there? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And he kind of you almost want someone who makes you think because you're still learning um, all the time. I mean, I don't proclaim to know everything about the industry and about what I'm doing, but you're always continuously learning about different things and finding new methods and finding new ways and people and stuff like that. So it's good to have someone that can you can bounce off or say, "Oh, have you thought about doing this?" Because you actually I didn't think about that. So yeah, he's a good guy, definitely.
Yeah, I think having a mentor does make a lot of sense because I think, especially if you're on your own in your business, you can internalize a lot of things. And I think it's nice to have someone to encourage you to have different perspectives or think about
Yeah,
different things. Just having that outside point of view, I think, makes a
yeah,
huge
100%.
difference.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Louise, your brand has been around for quite a while now. What have you learned
Mhm.
about building a brand that lasts? Because, brands come and go, but you've been around for 12 years now. You're bringing out new collections. How have you got there?
Um, do you know what? So last year I really struggled round about sort of October, November time, which isn't great for me anyway, because my mum died a week before my birthday. So that kind of time is always, even though I was trying to push it to the back of my mind, it's always like not really a good time. But last year was really bad. I was in such a bad funk because as a creative and as somebody that's doing something where you have to sell, to make money, you you have these doubts in your mind all the time. What am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? And everybody wants to sell. That's how you grow. That's how business works. And I wasn't selling as much as I thought I should be selling. But then can you put a number on that? Some people sell 10, 15 a month. I'll be selling 5 a month, whatever. Um, I think you do get into your head. You really get into your head and think that, everyone's doing so much better than you and I should be here and I'm only here. And everyone's journey is completely different. And, when I have serious conversations with other people in the industry, they say the same thing. So it's just like, "Oh, okay." I'm not as bad as I think I am. So, yeah, it's, you just gotta stand your ground. You just gotta, and I always come back to the reason why I started, which was memory of my mom. So for me to kinda jack it all in would just be kinda, you know, just quitting, and I'm not a quitter. So I'm gonna push it as far as I can go with it and just, bear that in mind, the reason why I did it. And I think it's easier now because I know a lot more than I did when I first started. So, you can make good choices. Um, and I think that's what it is when you first start. You don't know where to go. Are you doing the right thing? Um, but yeah, you just gotta keep going. You really have. And now it just it it rolls off my tongue so easily, but it's not easy. It's really, really difficult. Because you wanna sell and you start doubting yourself and you start thinking, "Oh, it's not as good, and maybe I should do this instead," and you literally I remember my nephew said to me, "Auntie, you just have to keep going. Don't stop. You remember why you started," and that always comes back to me. So that's my push, if you like. And, when I talk to people who are not, they're dress designers and stuff like that, they have the same thing, even though they didn't start, for the same reason as myself. They have really bad days as well because people are watching you, what's she up to? Is she creating? Is she doing this? You know, um, and you wanna be able to say, "Yeah, I'm selling like 100 bags a day." That's not the reality, So, yeah, you do have to keep going, and it is really lonely, like I said, because you're on your own. Um, you don't have anyone to kinda bounce off. I mean, my friends are great, but I don't wanna keep going to my friends every 5 minutes, when I'm having a bad day and stuff like that. So, yeah, you just gotta keep pushing forward, and it is really difficult. There's no Yeah, unless you're Jay-Z or Beyonce, it's really difficult. Do you know what I mean? As someone who's still trying to grow and find a mark and find their place, yeah, it's really difficult. But just keep going.
Thank you. And I think it's really important for people to hear you say it's difficult as well, because I think you were talking at the beginning and you were saying, "Oh, I thought you weren't selling as many as you thought bags as you thought you should
Mm,
be." But I think a lot of these not limitations, but a lot of these sports that we have is based on how we think other people are doing and how we think we compare. But in
yeah,
reality, I think we always assume that everyone is doing better than us.
yeah,
And
100%.
without knowing the facts
Yeah,
and without knowing, and you don't know the struggle and the hours that go
yeah,
in and the
yeah.
cash flow, all of that, none of us ever know. So I think thank you for being really honest, because I think
Mm.
it's really important to say that it's hard, because sometimes otherwise you look at people and you think, oh, they have it easy. Why are they finding this easy? I struggle with this. Why am I finding it difficult? So I think it's so important to put
It's
it out
so
there.
funny because yeah, 100%. And I think, in lockdown, it was so hard for me because I had all these pieces. My flat looked like a factory. I had all these pieces. I think, did we go into lockdown something like 2019? And I just received my bags, my collection, my whole collection. And like I say, I didn't really work out how I was going to sell them. And I was still kind of figuring that out. So to see everyone, all these different brands popping up with 5,000 followers. I'm thinking, you only came out last week. How can you have 5,000 followers already? And there's me with my 600. And it was tough because you start to overthink, oh, maybe your brand isn't good, or maybe it's this, or, and yeah. And in reality, like you said, it always comes back to me. You just don't know somebody else's journey. I mean, Jane might have an amazing brand because she's got financial backing. And to be quite honest, Vicky, sometimes it is all about money, being able to, push yourself forward and get to where you need to be. That financial backing can make all the difference. So yeah, it is, you do have to kind of just stand firm and just go through it. But yeah, it is really difficult. I think if anyone turns around and says it's not, I'd love to know their story and their strategy. it's so easy. Do you know what I mean? Maybe someone who's been doing it for so long, but even still, a lot of brands are actually coming out now and voicing and saying, look, yeah, last year we didn't do as well as we hoped we would do with X bag or X pair of trousers, you know? So I think people are a lot more honest now about their struggles in fashion and how they, you know, how they're going with growing with their brand because I think people think, oh, Tory Burch not gonna have a problem, but I'm sure she has. It's a different level of problems. You know what I mean? Because she's a larger brand, so I'm sure she's got a problem. Shout out to Tori.
And so what's next? What's next for you and the brand, and what are you excited about?
I am excited about designing another two pieces to add to the collection. So I'm just doing that at the moment and using some leather and getting it down and getting some samples made and growing the brand. I would love to get into store as well, get some more brand awareness and brand visibility, and also do wholesale. So yeah,
Oh, that's all exciting. There's a lot going on.
yeah,
And final question, Louise, what would your number one piece of advice be for other product creators?
do it.
Oh, I love that.
Just just do it. I meet so many people who say to me, "Oh, it's so easy," and da, da, da. I'm like, "But this and but that." I'm just like, you know what? It's gonna be difficult in the beginning. It always is because you're doing something that you've never done before. Um, I used to be in fear of fear. Do you know what I mean? Like not doing something because I'm fearful of doing something, but I'd hate to leave this world and not do something because of the unknown or and that I could have done really well. So I think you just gotta take the bite the bullet and just do it. But I think there needs to be something in you that pushes you. I meet a lot of women who have got amazing jobs. They're in finance, they're making a lot of money, but they don't want to do the job anymore and they want to design. Like I met someone who wants to design socks, yoga socks. And we were talking about she's actually got the designs. She's actually been to China. She's met the production team, everything. But she's worried about leaving her job because, that's how she funds herself, her life. They've got kids as well. So, but she's itching. When I talk to her, she's like me, was so excited to talk about, our brand and where we see ourselves and, what we're going to be doing in the future and stuff like that. And I said to her, you should just do it. And she said, I am. She said, I just need 6 months to really kind of convince my husband. But she says she's definitely going to do it. And I think there needs to be a drive and a passion in you because that will, help you to move forward. If you're just doing it because you're bored with your job or whatever, I don't know. I don't know. That's not why I did it, but I think you really do need because that's what's going to get you through the tough times, the bad and the tough times. So yeah, definitely,
That's
definitely to
exactly
just
what I
do
was
it.
about to say. Like, if you don't have a purpose, because as you said
Yeah,
before, it is hard. So I think
yeah,
unless you have a real purpose that's compelling you to keep going, it can
yeah,
be very easy to go, do you know what? I'll go get a job or I'll do
yeah,
something else. Because that can sometimes be a really viable solution. But if you have something bigger than that, something that's
yeah,
compelling you, I think that it makes it a lot harder to give up and motivates you
yeah,
more to just keep going.
100%. And I meet so many people who have such good ideas. I mean, it's just incredible, but they're scared. They're really just scared. You know, they're in a really good job. They've been in their job for like 4 or 5 years. They get, their salary's great. And to say that you're going to give that up to start something that you don't know may or may not work, it's it's scary, but I just think you should just do it. I really do. I would just hate not to do something and then find out that it could have been so good, you know? But yeah, definitely. I think it needs to be passionate. You need to be passionate about it. And luckily I've met some really amazing people who do some really good stuff. They design apps and stuff like that, and whatever. So, but yeah, the woman who wants to do the yoga socks, I hope she does it because she's so passionate about it. And to actually have your own manufacturers who's designed, you know, um, your actual item already just shows how much she really wants to do it. So, yeah, I think you just got to do it. Like Nike, just do it.
I agree. I have a friend who quite often will say, "Oh, I wish, maybe she's even listening." She comes up with an idea and she gets so far, but always stops at the point where you have to actually commit, is the point at which she always stops. And I said to her that,
Why does she stop?
as you said, the fear, because it is a big leap, isn't it? To
Yeah,
suddenly put down what, whether because it's an investment, whether it is
yeah.
money, it's also
There you go.
time, it's
Yeah.
resources. You're sort of, it's always at the point where she has to actually commit, that she goes, "Oh, I'll just think about this a bit longer, maybe in 6 months," and then
Oh.
and I think your advice to just do it, I think, applies to her, but also to so many people, because what's
Mm.
that thing? When you look back on your life, they say that you'll never regret the things. What is it? You you won't regret the things you do. You'll regret the things you didn't do. I've butchered that phrase, but you know what I mean. You're never going
100%.
to look back and think, "Oh, I wish I hadn't started a handbag brand."
Yeah.
But if you
I
didn't start, you would always be like, "Oh, what if? What if I'd
100%.
done that?"
I think it's better to try and not work out than the not knowing. It's the not knowing, that you could have done something, it could have worked out, and then you're just gonna be beating yourself up. And I met someone like 10, 15 years ago, and I remember they were just sort of, "Oh, I could have done that. I could have done this." I'm just like, "Yeah, but you didn't. Why didn't you?" But everyone's got a story, and everyone's journey is different. And maybe they've got family commitments or something like that, and they just don't have the time, or sometimes people just don't have the inclination. Where do they start? Because when you think about a business, you automatically think money. I need money to grow. And you do, but not in the beginning. In the beginning, you need to like lay the foundation and like work out how you're going to sell and find your community and that kind of stuff. And then you can move forward if you think you've got a viable business, and if it's something that you're really passionate about. But yeah, I think people just need to just crack on because we're getting older.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We only have so much time and only have
Yeah,
one life.
100%.
Oh, that's a really positive note to
100%.
end it on. Thank you so much, Louise, and thank you for everything that you've shared.
Thank you so much for listening right to the end of this episode. Do remember that you can get the full back catalogue and lots of free resources on my website, vickyweinberg.com. Please do remember to rate and review this episode if you've enjoyed it, and also share it with a friend who you think might find it useful. Thank you again, and see you next week. Hello, if you're selling on Amazon or you're planning to and you'd like ongoing support as you go, I've just opened the doors to my membership, Amazon Made Easy. It's a space for product-based business owners who want expert guidance, somewhere to ask questions, and a bit of structure and accountability while they build and grow on Amazon. Inside, you'll get regular live Q&A calls with me, optional co-working sessions, practical resources, and a supportive community of people all working on similar things. It's designed to make selling on Amazon feel clearer, simpler, and much less overwhelming, and to give you somewhere to go where you're stuck or unsure of what to do next. You can join at any time and stay for as long as it's helpful. And if you'd like to take a look, you'll find the full link in the show notes.